Welcome back to another...
Sorry. You told me what to say, and then I told you what to say for your part. Why didn't we just like switch it?
Welcome back to another episode of Learning to Live.
On today's episode, we are going to talk about the basics of starting a garden. Everything you need to know for anyone to start from scratch.
So the first thing you need to do is pick a location of where you're going to put your garden based on sunlight. So you want to look throughout the day and see where the sun comes up and where it goes down and where it's at during the middle of the day, because most of your plants are going to need a lot of sun. Some need shade. You want to make sure where you're putting your garden is going to be a good fit for that so that it'll get plenty of sunlight.
Okay, so the second thing you want to do is you want to pick a container or decide if you're going to do it in the ground. If you do it in a container, you do have complete control over the soil you use. Whereas if you do it in the ground, you might have soil that has a lot of clay in it. You might have sandy soil. So then ideally you would want to amend that soil somehow, mixing like compost, manure, things in it, so that it creates a good habitat and it's healthy soil for your plant. Healthy soil makes a healthy plant. The other benefit of having it in a container is that you can move it. So like here in Michigan, if we were to grow sweet potatoes, they need really warm weather and they grow longer than our season lasts. So if I wanted to grow sweet potatoes, I would grow those in a container because we would need to bring them inside before it was time to harvest them so they could continue, doing their thing, and then it would be time to harvest them. Whereas if I left them outside, it would get cold and they would die. It depends on which one you want to do, pot or the ground.
And if you're going to do a pot, I would really recommend doing the cloth pots. They seem to be the best. You can reuse them. They drain really well. The soil gets aerated really well, and they don't take up any space.
What he said.
If you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe.
Because we need it.
To force the YouTube algorithm to push this out to more people. So the next thing you need to do is pick the soil you're going to use. We recommend using basically 100% compost, or the easiest thing to do is just go to your local gardening store and buy whatever compost they sell there. You can usually buy it by the scoop or by the bag.
I will add that last year we used our soil, which is very sandy, and mixed it with manure that we got from a farmer. And that is what we used to start our garden. You don't have to have the best version of soil possible, but ideally, you want that black, rich soil because that's going to be the most nutrient dense for your plants, which feeds them so you get healthier plants. Also, it will hold moisture really well. So for me, I had to water ours frequently because sand, it just the water goes through it. So that's ideally what you want, but you can start with soil that is subpar to, compost.
And the downside to that is your plants might just not get as big and produce as much, but they will still grow and they'll still produce, especially if you fertilize the plants. Yes. We fertilized all of ours last year and it turned out pretty decent.
So the fourth thing that you want to do is decide if you want to go with a seed or plant. Budget-wise, you would want to do seeds. We actually have a video that we made that tells you how to start your seeds, shows you the whole setup. I'll link that video and you can go look at that if you would like to. If you don't have time, then you could go to the store, you could buy a plant, just take it out of what you bought it in, stick it in the ground, and you're good to go. If you're just doing a few pots or one, you could just go buy the plants. If you're doing a whole garden, starting with seeds.
Some plants I would not recommend buying because even if you go to the store and you buy the plant, it might be $4 for a pack of plants, but they're only going to produce a few crops, and it might actually be cheaper just to go buy the crops from the grocery store instead of growing them yourself versus starting from seed. So you always want to compare that before you go and buy, $30 worth of plants and then you only get $20 worth of produce out of it. You're kind of in the hole there.
Can you think of one where just don't buy the plant, just buy it from the grocery store?
No, In My Gardener has a video about that though. But if you start them from seeds, then it is worth growing. It saves you money.
So number 5, you want to prep your soil.
Dump soil in pot. That's it.
If you are going to do the ground, then that would probably, I can't tell, probably require you to till the ground. We did kind of hills.
Mounds.
Mounds,
yep.
Yeah. So it's just getting the soil ready. For a pot, like I said, super easy. Ground's a little different. You have to do a little more preparation. You want to make sure if you're doing it in the ground that there's not any large rocks or anything that would cause the roots to have any issues expanding.
Especially for like root vegetables like carrots and stuff that grow in the ground, because if they hit a rock, they won't grow like a carrot. They will zigzag and go all over the place if they hit a rock. If you've started from seeds and your plants are ready to transplant, it's warm enough outside, then you want to start your transplanting process. Now, before you do that, you want to harden your plants off. So you'll want to take them outside, leave them out there for like 2 hours the first day, bring them back in, take them out the next day for like 4 hours, bring them back in, and you work them up till they can take the whole day out there, because the sun is so much more powerful than your grow lights. If you just take them straight out there, the sun will actually like burn your plants and kill them, and then all your work's for nothing. So you want to make sure you harden them off before you transplant them. When you go to transplant them, you want to be very careful not to damage the roots as you're taking them out of the pots. So you want to like squeeze around the container and then push them out from the bottom. You don't want to pull by the stem and break your plant off, and then all that work was for nothing again.
I've done that.
And then you want to make sure when you transplant them, you don't want to bury them under the dirt. The same level that they are in your pots, you want to plant them into the ground or your outdoor pots. Because if you bury them and cover the stem up with the dirt, it can actually kill the plant. Some plants can handle it, but most can't. They'll actually die.
Except for tomatoes. You actually do want to bury your tomatoes a little deeper. If you notice when a tomato plant grows, it has like a bunch of little fuzzy looking things sticking out of the stem. But if you put them in the ground, they will actually grow roots all along the stem. So you want to bury a tomato deeper, and that will make it stronger and hardier and more secure, so that as your tomato plant grows, it has a really strong, stable base. Yes, what he said, with the exception of tomatoes. I know that much.
And then when you do transplant them in the ground, you want to make sure you water them, and you don't want to get the water on the leaves, because the sun can, somehow it's like a magnifying glass. When the sun shines through it, it can burn through stuff. The water drops on the leaves, it can actually magnify the sun's rays, and it can burn your leaves. So you want to make sure you water from the bottom of the plant, not on the top where the leaves are, because then it can burn it. And you want to make sure you water in the mornings. If you water at night, then you're at more risk of getting mold on your plants, and a lot of mildews and fungus grow during the night when the humidity is higher. So you want to make sure you water in the morning, and when you transplant them, you want to water them more often at first than you would later on, because they're kind of going through a transition process of new soil, and it's a very shocking experience.
Yeah, they're in shock pretty much, so you want to baby them a little bit.
But some seeds you can just sow straight into the ground. You just want to make sure you look at the back of the seed packet, and it'll tell you when you can sow it outside in the ground. You want to make sure it's warm enough that it'll germinate, and you want to keep your soil moist when you do that.
The care while you have your garden and you have your plants. Feeding it, just like humans in general should take vitamins, we're supposed to eat healthy, your plants need the same thing. So yes, you want healthy soil, but you also want to fertilize it. And some plants, like tomatoes, are heavy feeders, but some of them don't need as much nutrients as other plants. A lot of people will do like worm tea, like compost tea. We use Trifecta in my gardener's fertilizer that he has. You can Google it, honestly, like ways to feed your garden, and probably a million different things are gonna come up on how to give nutrients to your garden, to your plants throughout the season. But besides just pulling weeds and feeding them and watering your garden, and then, you know, if you have certain pests or whatever, it's actually really easy.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
I'll include the garden that we had last year so you can see. It looks messy, but it was successful. We had a lot of produce, and even though we were experimenting and we planted way too many cucumbers, like way more than we needed.
Yeah.
We had so many cucumbers.
Like 5-gallon buckets a day of them.
Oh my gosh, we made so many pickles, and we were giving away cucumbers. We had so many. Don't need that many cucumber plants. But we didn't have ideal soil. I have 2 kids, and so the weeds, for the most part, I kept up with, but it wasn't perfect. And I did water it almost every day. Some days I didn't feel good, I didn't get to it, different things. It was really green, it was flourishing. We had tons of produce, but everything wasn't perfect, and we were still able to do it. And it was actually, I mean, it was work, but it was way easier than I thought it was gonna be, and it was definitely worth it.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of produce from it, especially cucumbers.
Yes, tons of them.
Starting a garden is totally worth it. Just for the fact of the satisfaction aspect, And then also for your budget.
And you know where your food came from.
Yes. And you know it's healthy. You don't have to worry about all the chemicals if you want to stay away from the chemicals. And I mean, you go grocery shopping in your yard. I mean, that's pretty cool to me.
Yep.
Maybe I'm a nerd, but...
And you can always start super small. You can
Yeah.
start with just a couple of plants, you know, just pick a couple
Yeah.
easy ones to grow and start there.
Or even like an herb garden, or just start with one pot and just see how you do. That was terrible.
3, 2.
Picture the action.
On today's episode.
Like little alien eyes.
Oh my goodness.
So, I don't forget. I'm supposed to die.
Why?
I was getting proper. It's imagining you getting proper.
I'm proper already. So you can pause and then we'll go in. Babe. Like you've been crying now.
Oh no. Wait. Is that helping? Helping.
It will get pushed out to more. Now I'm starting to mess out.
I like your oomph with it. I don't have the oomph.
Okay, well you do.
Subscribe button because we need it. See, I sound too nice.
Babe, do it again. That was good.
No, it wasn't.
That was.
No, it sounds like I'm greeting people at church.
Okay, hit that like and subscribe. Put a little.
If you haven't already, hit that.
Please like and subscribe.